We need TV measurement, of course, because we want to know who's watching TV and where they're watching. And it's a very dynamic landscape, as we all know. So during the course of this evening, we're just going to look at how we can make sense of that in terms of planning and measurement. Before we do that, we have an exclusive short presentation from Evan Shapiro, who is the media commentator and the owner of the Media War and Peace Substack, which some of you may read. And we're just going to watch that first.
Hi, my name is Evan Shapiro. I'm the media cartographer. I'm very interested in the UK television video ecosystem. I've studied it, I've written about it, and I've offered my advice on it, even when it's not asked for. This exploration of British TV led me to this partnership, this collab, as I like to call it, with Barb, the authority on video consumption in the UK. For a media nerd like myself, Barb's combo of panel and screen level big data across 4 screens, as well as the participation they get from all of the video players there in collecting data on video consumption, makes me feel like a kid in a candy store. Barb unlocked their candy store for me, allowing me to create a first of its kind report on total video viewing in the UK, which we released earlier this month. There were a number of eye-opening revelations in the data offered about how Brits watch telly and video. But before we get into that, a wee bit of context. The UK is super old. 55% of the world's population is under the age of 35. Conversely, 58% of Britain's citizens are over 35. This means that millennials and Gen Z make up a smaller share of viewers in the UK than they do in the US and other regions on the planet, except for the rest of Europe. So some of the media habits popular with those generations have not yet taken full hold here. It's also important to note that generations age. This sometimes blows people's minds. Millennials are no longer kids. They have kids. The oldest millennials are now 43. The oldest Gen Zers are 27. Every year, more millennials enter the 35 plus demographic and more of Gen Z join the 25 plus demographic. As you dive into the data from this report and note the wide gap in media consumption between Brits under and over 35, know that the video customs of the younger demographics will travel with them as they begin to dominate the older demos and as they become more powerful as consumers, as employers, as taxpayers, and even as members of parliament. With all that said, let's dig into the actual numbers, shall we? Today, broadcast still makes up the largest share of video viewing on all screens by far. This is in part due to the wide availability of high quality, free broadcast television that is at the heart of the British television ecosystem. It's also due in significant part to the generational dynamics I mentioned earlier. That said, broadcast share of total viewing has dropped by 6%, a drop of 11.5% in absolute terms in less than 2 years. Over that same time, streaming has grown by 5% overall and more than 25% in the absolute. And while broadcast now holds 46% of overall viewing, streaming and social video now combine for more total viewing than all the UK broadcasters combined. It should be noted that the UK does not have the same storied tradition of pay TV consumption as in the US, and therefore pay TV in Britain never really reached the same height as in America, and it's therefore more at risk as new forms of video consumption take hold. When you look at consumption of Brits over 35, you can see that they drive a large share of broadcast and pay TV consumption. However, streaming consumption grew faster with this demographic over the last 2 years than with any other age group. When you dive into the data for those under 35, you see just how different younger generations' viewing habits are from their elders. Social video, which includes YouTube and YouTube on TVs, is now more than 41% of their video consumption, even ahead of premium streaming. Social and streaming video now comprise more than 80% of the video diets of Brits between the ages of 16 and 34. Gen Z and millennials now watch each social video and streaming more than all the broadcasters and pay TV channels combined. Mind the gap, indeed. When you dig into the side-by-side, channel-by-channel comparisons, these trends become even more pronounced. Yes, amongst all UK audiences, BBC remains very strong. This is in part due to the fact that it's free, at least theoretically, in part due to the older average age of the population, and in large part due to the fact that BBC got into streaming really early with the iPlayer. But With all Brits, YouTube is now the #2 video platform, having surpassed ITV, at least for the first half of this year. Note, this is despite the massive ITV hit, Mr. Bates in the Post Office. You'll note that Netflix is now solidly in 4th place, ahead of Channel 4, Sky, and Paramount's Channel 5. An interesting subplot here, however, is that Netflix's share of viewing has remained flat over the last 2 years. BBC, ITV, and all the more traditional TV players do far better with older audiences, with ITV holding steady at #2 and Channel 4 and Sky doing well in 4th and 5th places. But it's quite notable that even with the older set, YouTube holds a strong 3rd place and is growing its share of viewers over 35, up more than 20% in the absolute over the last 2 years. It's an entirely different story with audiences under 35, however. BBC garners just 10% of video viewing with millennials and Gen Z, while YouTube, Netflix, and TikTok now occupy the top 3 slots. YouTube's share of viewing with 16 to 34-year-olds is now larger than BBC, ITV, Sky, Channel 4, and Channel 5 combined. Back to that interesting subplot. Netflix's share of viewing with 16 to 34-year-olds is down more than 3% in the last 2 years, an absolute drop of 17%. From this data, it appears that that share is being stolen primarily by Disney. Considering how much Netflix is spending in this market, this should be concerning for them, especially as consumption for premium streaming time increases over the next 2 years. There are many more notable trends and insights in this data, and I hope you take the time to look through it all. But my biggest takeaway is this. Younger British audiences do not have the same loyalty or muscle memory for public broadcasting as their older counterparts, nor do they seem to be developing it as they age. If anything, as the generations age, the habits of younger UK viewers seem to be taking hold with more and more of the population. So what happens when the majority of households and taxpayers in the UK are millennials and Gen Z? What happens when those 2 generations run the government? This is not a hypothetical question. That time is nigh. My answer to this challenge is this. YouTube and TikTok are not just competitors. They are opportunities. When broadcasters and pay TV channels have embraced YouTube as an additive distribution channel, as Channel 4 and BT have in recent years, the data clearly indicates that the audiences are not cannibalistic, but rather additive. TikTok is a powerful marketing platform. YouTube is now the most powerful broadcasting platform on earth. I believe, based on the data that I see, that there is a tremendous upside for public service media to use these platforms to reach new audiences and earn new revenues, and to fulfill the mandates to educate, inform, and entertain the British public. It should be noted that this is my opinion and mine only, albeit a relatively educated one. I want to thank Justin Sampson and everyone at Barb for the opportunity to access this enormous wealth of data and to write this report. I'm really sorry I couldn't be there with you today. I hope you enjoy the event.
So what I'd like to do is I'll ask each panellist to introduce themselves in turn, and then we're just going to also get them to answer one of the headlines questions that was in the agenda that you've seen. So if we will start with Neil, first of all, tell us about your role at ITV and, the question of, are we happy that we can still measure TV accurately in this fragmented landscape?
Good evening, everybody. Yeah, my name is Neil Mortensen. I'm the director of the ITV Insight Group, affectionately known as TIG inside ITV. I was seeing that Evan is a media cartographer. I think of me as more of a media cart horse. My team looks after insights across the whole of the company. It is formed of researchers, data analysts, data scientists, measurement experts, and we're there to influence key decisions right across the PLC. So we work with everybody you could probably think of that works inside a broadcaster, strategy, marketing, regulation, everybody, every single team. And the question again was whether I feel that we're doing enough to measurement, is that right?
Yeah, can we still accurately measure everything?
I think instinctively I'd say yes. I think we've been, the UK and Barb has been evolving brilliantly and consistently over the last few years. I suppose, if I've only got 30 seconds, I'd say I'd have a little asterisk to say, of course, in the future, it is going to get more and more difficult. So doing well right now. I know, Barb, I've got lots of plans to tackle the future, but I think, it is going to be more difficult, more complex. And I think you named accuracy as well. I think probably there might be quite a few people in here who would have a debate about what accuracy actually means. But I think, to sort of, whether you feel it's accuracy of measuring people behaviour or accuracy of measuring devices, that's a sort of debate that we have in the future as well.
Okay. Well, Lucy, you next then. So introduce yourself, and also the sort of headline question for you is, are people still watching TV? That's sitting on the agenda, so let's kill that one first.
About an hour.
Yeah, so I was told I had a minute to answer that question, so I'll have to be brief. But in terms of introduction, good evening. My name's Lucy Gregory. I'm the Vice President of Audience Measurement and Insight for the Walt Disney Company. And similar to Neil, my role is sort of quite widespread. So on the content editorial side, we work with the commissioning teams. So in tandem with ITV Studios, we've just released Rivals, which I am sure there's a lot of nodding heads of people who have seen that. It's fantastic, and if you haven't, I don't know what you're doing here. You should be at home watching it. And also our linear channels, so across the marketing schedule and so on. And then on the commercial side, my team support both our programme distribution as well as the advertising sales. So very relevant to tonight is the fact that we work across our Disney Plus advertising tier. So the question about whether people still watch telly causes a lot of debate, and it's a really straightforward answer. Certainly from the Walt Disney's perspective, our linear businesses are really still very important for us. Across Europe, we run over 150 networks across kids, general entertainment and factual, so all targeting different age groups and different types of cohorts. But along with many media owners, we run that parallel strategy with streaming because we want to give audiences choices in the way that they're going to consume the content. So it depends how we define television viewing, but certainly, linear, BVOD, SVOD are all consumed, according to Barb, in home, 90% on the TV set. So if we consider that watching telly, I think we'll look at that kind of being brought together. And there's just one point I want to talk about. I think, in the original conversation we had was about it aging up and some of Evan's points there. Just, it's interesting in terms of context for Disney Plus, 50% of our 16 plus audience, our adult audience, is under 35. So, we have a significantly young skewing platform driven by various content pieces, which I can get into later. There's some fantastic shows that really tap into young adults' sense of their nostalgia or known IP. So really, I think there's a lot of energy and excitement about delivering across audiences.
Great stuff. Okay, and then Amy, the question for you after you've introduced yourself is really, now that you have so much data that you can probably go and find somebody who's in market for a particular type of car, we have that sort of targeting capability now. Does it actually matter to you where that audience is, as long as you find them somewhere? Do you care what they're watching?
Yes, so in short. So I'm Amy Tocock. Hello, everyone. Apologies in advance, I'm a bit coldy, so if I sniff, I'm very sorry. So I am the voice, I guess, of the agency side here. So I have, I'm head of planning at PhD, which is a media agency, and I've spent the last 20 years, more specifically across the AV landscape. So this world is dear to my heart. And in terms of, so your question, yes, like viewers, you can't really bucket advertisers into, there's not one way that they all behave. There's a vast spectrum of needs and requirements that advertisers have. And for some it is low-cost eyeballs. At the other end of the scale, we have advertisers who, are super keen to be in very specific content and environments. And there's lots of different briefs that we receive along that spectrum, and they all look in very different ways. And even within them, from the same advertiser, you'll have briefs where an addressable answer is the right answer, and a broad reach answer is the right answer as well, is for something else. So, yeah, yes, but lots of other things as well.
Okay, great, all right. Okay, so let's dive into the sort of the measurement detail to some extent then. I mean, the UK, I get the impression that we're actually very advanced in this cross-platform measurement and planning. And Neil, you sort of referred to Barb, obviously they've been doing a lot of work. I mean, just give us your take on where we are in terms of delivering what buyers need right now.
Well, I think about what buyers need, but I also think about what all of my constituents in ITV need. So that could be, say, our commissioning teams and studios teams, the whole breadth of it. And Lucy and I were talking actually, I think it was last week when we met, we were talking about, when we met to talk about this panel, about how lucky we are in the UK to have such a well-established, stable measurement system that is making so many advances. When I know that Disney operate in so many markets, and so do ITV, and we were talking about the data that we get from lots of different territories, and how the data we get in the UK is just way, way above it, isn't it? It's just, you know, excuse me, it's just, you know, is right at the front of the comet. And I think, you know, we have been, I often think about it, I've been lucky enough in the past to be inside that Barb system and sat on the board for ITV and actually for the IPA when I worked in the agency world. And I think sometimes when you have a measurement system and the things aren't moving that quickly from the outside, it feels like nothing's moving. It feels like it's a bit stagnating and everything. But I like to say that's the sound of rigor, really. And I think that what Barb has been really good at in the last few years is, of course, actually talking much more about the things that have happened and the things that have changed and the developments that have been made for the system. I actually wrote some down because I couldn't remember them all, but I wrote a little list, and I wrote, well, in the last sort of 10 years, we've gone from TV sets only measurement to all devices, which is a massive thing in itself, huge. We've gone from TV only homes to broadband only homes and TV homes. We've gone from broadcaster viewing to broadcaster streamers, linear, non-linear, PVRs. We just did 28 days in the past. We can now do over 28 days and pre-TX measurement. Look, I mean, the list goes on. We had a TV set meter in the old days, we've got that, and a rooster meter. We had 5,200 panel, now we've got 7,000. So I don't know if everybody knows about these things, but they're giant steps forward. Yeah.
Okay, and one of the giant steps recently, well, in the last 2 years, was, of course, starting to measure the streamers and the video sharing platforms. And Advanced Campaign Hub is being updated to include, you know, Netflix ad tier, Prime ad tier, Discovery Plus, Disney Plus. There's certainly a conversation about being added to that. So, I mean, what does that do for us? I mean, how does that help? So, first of all, from a Disney Plus perspective, let's suppose you become part of that. What does that mean for Disney Plus?
We were the first streamer to sign up for Barb in November 21, when they first started measuring streamers and video sharing services. And I think, you know, just pushing them along the curve was their decision to go quite bold on broad platform, but depth in content measurement as well. And that gave massive transparency to the industry on what the streamers were doing, you know, and I think they went public with that very quickly without actually needing the streamers to participate. And that's been really a different approach compared to a number of markets. So that's definitely pushed them along the curve. And I think, you know, we all want to understand what everyone else is saying about us. So FOMO kicks in across the board. And so now, you know, we're on another journey as Disney Plus with our ad tier, and absolutely, you know, our advertising agencies are asking us, you know, who's watching, why are they watching, you know, what's happening to the campaign that's being seen, and are we adding reach? And those are really the key answers or questions in our first year. And by the way, Disney Plus is 1 on Friday. So, you know, we've had to cover a lot of ground pretty quickly. And being part of the Advanced Campaign Hub is really important to get onto the planners' tools and to help facilitate that.
What do you get an ad tier for its birthday?
Okay. So I suppose I should point out at this point that there are other sort of independent measurement solutions as well. You know, it's not just Barb. We don't have time to go through them, but I know you work with Samba TV and Video Amp in the US, for example.
So I think, in the US, and I think, you know, that the Advanced Campaign Hub is the pre-piece. In fact, we're actually testing now in Europe with Audience Project. So they are based on first-party data, exposure to campaigns, but they then bring that into TechEdge, and they can actually model through with the linear data, which is Barb data, and work through on that.
Okay, so Amy, from a media buyer's point of view, if you've got, BVOD, linear, broadcast, all the major streamers with their ad tiers and potentially the video sharing platform, all part of your kind of planning pot, how does that change your life?
Well, we've been crying out for it, and we understand that these things take time. It's incredibly complex and incredibly complicated. And I really like the way you say about the sound of rigor and the fact that we don't. Although we have been waiting a long time, because when we're looking on behalf of a client of a TV asset or a video asset that they want to put out there as part of their advertising campaign, reach now isn't just about going out and broadcast in the way it was 10 years ago, and even 5 years. It changes, it evolves so much year after year, and for us to look at that holistically is so important so that we can make the right decisions pre the campaign, and then also be able to understand, was that the right thing to do? So having the planning tools and the post-campaign evaluation tools are absolutely imperative for the decisions we make on behalf of our clients. Sorry, what did you ask? Have I gone off on one?
No. You've answered it all. So, and in terms of, having all these streamers in now as well, does it just mean that you can sort of deduplicate everybody and see the unique contribution of each?
Yeah.
Do you need to see, if you've already got Netflix on a plan, do you need to see what Disney Plus add on top of that in terms
Absolutely.
of...
So I think we've talked about the great leaps that Barb have made, and they absolutely have, and having that as a source, as a gold standard, trusted source is really important, and we're in full support of using all the Barb data, and that's the ideal standard to which we'll work to. In the meantime, we have created our own proprietary tools to understand that pre and post, and we have got a post-evaluation tool that we've created, and we use it at PhD and at OMG that allows us to understand the deduplicated reach and frequency across linear, with a few on broadcast and VOD and all the streamers. And it is really important. That's giving us lots of learnings. Some of the time it's just backing up what you already think, but it's really important for us to be able to see I think everybody has a part to play. This isn't to say we're going to not spend with these people anymore to invest money over here. It's about how does the whole pie come together? What's the sum of the parts? And what is interesting from what we've seen is that actually all of the channels have a very different profile, and they really are bringing something different to the table. And there isn't a great deal of overlap, for example, between a YouTube viewer and a BVOD linear. So it's a unique audience, and BVOD is certainly adding a unique audience. We need that understanding to be able to go back to our clients and help prove to them that every pound that they invest is a pound well spent, because there's more and more pressure on them to ensure that is the case. We absolutely we need these tools to be able to make those decisions.
Okay, and Neil, just give us the view from the production side of things, because obviously ITV, and as well as being a sales house and the same with Disney, you are massive studios and producers.
Yeah.
Does this kind of cross-platform measurement improvement help you in terms of content licensing or sales, or what you produce next?
It's just a huge... we were completely in the dark. So it's a huge advance for us and incredibly helpful. We have made Rivals for Disney. We have made Fool Me Once for Netflix, which is, I think, one of their biggest shows of all time in the UK. Squid Games for Netflix too. And Dick Turpin for Apple. There's a whole host of shows that we make for streamers, as well as we make for the other broadcasters too. I wouldn't even know how Rivals have done, or how Squid Game was done, or Fool Me Once if it wasn't for the Barb measurement. And so we had previously a sort of real black hole where I know that our studios would be obviously wanting to try and get a recommission with their streamers, and the streamers, in many of them, not Disney Plus, of course, but some other streamers would change their measurement the whole time. They would only give you a little bit of information about your show. It would tend to be global in things like views or completed this, and it was completely bamboozling. And it's a sort of one-sided argument. You know, if you're trying to negotiate a recommission, everyone needs equal access to the data. So it's been transformational.
I'd like to talk about Barb Panel Plus very quickly, because that's the other really big update that's happening right now. And this is where Barb, they already do dovetail fusion, where the BVOD and the linear broadcasting data is kind of fused. But now we're going to get the other streamers' sort of census data added on, and of course the return path data from potentially millions of devices, so set-top boxes and smart TVs. So Lucy, you know, what does that give us? Why do we need, you know, big data plus panels? What is the actual outcome for a media owner and a sales house?
Well, we obviously like putting plus on the end of things too, so they're on to a winner to start with. This is all about, I think, how we started the conversation, which is about accuracy of measurement. And we have to move forward with bringing, there's just so much data around the way that content is being consumed and devices are being viewed. So to bring that together with a panel makes complete sense. I think, you know, everyone wins when accuracy is improved. And in our global mantra is I can never even say it, but interoperability, which means making sure that our first-party data is structured really in a way that it can be leveraged with a range of measurement providers, or, you know, in order to be able to create that interface to get improved measurement, improved accuracy. So, you know, really looking forward to hearing more about it over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Great, all right. Yeah. I suppose one other thing, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I wanted to say, I mean, it is really important, you know, broadcasters do have a lot of data coming in, and, you know, from just the information we get from our servers for our own streamers, to all of the different third-party contracts and third-party arrangements we have with other data sources. You know, you were mentioning Samba that before, and, you know, we have a ton of stuff that we do, which we're trying to deliver our outcome measurement for advertisers, and that involves, again, just a plethora of you know, 1,000 APIs coming into the building. And I think it just makes natural sense that we try and get and fuse, and Barb has always tried to do that, the best of panel data and the best of server data. So this is the next stage of that. And the more Barb can learn and the more that proof of concept goes through, the more we can learn, and we'll be more efficient as well in our internal systems too, I think.
Okay. Amy, do you want to add anything to that quickly?
Just, can we connect our API to yours?
Yeah.
Data, please.
Yeah, just plug in.
Okay. Okay, so I think if we're doing an hour panel on measurement, we probably can't go without mentioning Origin. So that's sort of, you know, our next, you know, we're still getting cross-platform right, but now we've got to start thinking about cross-media measurement as well. Now, I don't want to go into any of the details really, but what I just want to know mainly from you, Amy, is, you know, when Origin becomes a live product next year, how is that going to sort of affect you in your job? Because, you know, they're very open about the fact that they're measuring apples for pears, but they're doing it in a transparent and accountable way. I mean, this is what Phil Smith said just 3 weeks ago at the Future Media London. But presumably you are the one who has to make sense of that in terms of, you know, you've got all this reach data and it's very granular, but are you the person who has to decide if that's good reach or what your clients should actually be looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think before we get into the crux of the question about what it means for our jobs, essentially, advertisers are looking for, as I've said, you know, the best pound spent and looking to find the most valuable impressions. What we and then also look to see if they were the right impressions to have bought. What we bring to the table as the agency is that view of context, the view on quality, and we're really. It takes so much time to understand and analyse all the data that we see, and advertisers don't have that. So it's really that they're bringing the media agencies in because they can't, you know, it's a lot for them to just I think it would be difficult for them to just take that data and make their own decisions. They need that view of the media agency because it's so vast and complex. So what we're trying to, I know it is apples with pears, but in order to make the decisions as pure and true as they can be, we are trying to look to create apples with apples wherever we can, and we support, any measurement system that enables us to have a better view of this very complex world we're trying to understand to a standard, like we hold an MRC standard, at the very, very least. I think we've said there are so many questions that we're trying to answer when it comes to media planning on behalf of our clients. The reach, the combined delivered reach and frequency is just one of those questions. So to have more than one view on that, although we've got a few views because we've got our proprietary tools as well, it takes a lot of time and interrogation to really understand and know if what you're seeing is as close as to the truth as you can get. I think ideal world would be that we would have Barb data alongside other digital data, and there would be one source from, and that's what we'd be working with, as opposed to two views of a similar question when there are loads of other questions that we'd really love to answer and spend our time reflecting on.
Okay. Neil, do you want to add anything?
I just, from our perspective, we've been involved and having conversations with the Origin team for a long time. And, I think we've always been, it's a noble ambition to do what they're doing. I think anything that adds to the understanding of particularly for those platforms and its measuring that, to get them together and to measure those side by side is no mean feat. So, that's something that should be applauded. I think going back to I think from my personal view is that I think I'm sort of going back to what we need from a measurement system is, it's not exactly the same as what Origin is going to deliver for us. So we need that measurement of our content, obviously. We've got our public service broadcasting measurement that we need to make sure we have. So there's lots of things that we need out of a measurement system that Origin probably, hasn't actually purported to do anyway, So they're slightly different, I think.
Okay. So let's go back to Evan's points about YouTube then. So, and in particular, let's start with you, Lucy. I mean, he sort of made the point that, YouTube is this giant broadcasting platform now. Channel 4 are doing a lovely job working with them, giving them their content. And, all broadcasters should maybe think about using YouTube more as a distribution partner. So what's your kind of views on that, just quickly? So Lucy first.
I mean, Disney Plus is a relatively new platform in this ecosystem, and certainly what we're looking to do right now is build our own audience on our own platform. YouTube is a fantastic touch point for Disney in terms of, we had anything from, Deadpool and Wolverine on YouTube shows to Donald Duck on, So they certainly leverage and use our content, but it's a touch point for us amongst many others, like our cinemas and our, cruises and so on, to help bring that audience back. But certainly at the moment, our focus is building on our own platform.
Yeah. Okay. I asked lots of people in ITV actually in the last couple of weeks, and I didn't realise that we had so many channels already on YouTube. So our studios business has 140 different channels already running on YouTube, and I'm reliably informed delivering over 2 billion views alone this year. There you go. You heard it here first. So I think as far as a distribution platform, our distribution team is tasked with making sure we get our shows out in the most efficient and effective way to as many people as possible. And I think we actually, last year, we did do a small trial with one of our comedies called Go Ed, which is a show very close to my heart. And, I think just to see what sort of information we'd get back from YouTube and do that test. And for us, I think that's where we are. We're just kind of testing and learning on it. So I think we probably will do some more of that in the future. I haven't got any concrete plans written down, but that's where we're at with it. And I think we would use Barb to measure the incremental reach of that show.
Yeah, okay. And as I understand, Barb can already sort of tell all the channels that their content's been viewed on YouTube, and that's all tracked with audio and stuff.
Yeah, and if we can, like Channel 4 have done, you can easily set yourself up to measure at a content level if you want to.
Okay. Okay, so where does YouTube actually sit, though, in terms of, you know, is it TV? Is it digital video? Is some of it TV? I mean, you know, Amy, you go first. I mean, as from a media buyer's point of view, what part do you put YouTube in right now?
It's evolved over time. At OMG, we've got a product, a unified video outlook, which is it's about, you know, the language and the tools that we use to understand everything in that video landscape. And at what am I doing? At PhD, we've all video has been planned and bought through the AV team, aside from the social media, since the start of broadcast of VOD and YouTube was a thing. So although that created quite a lot of challenges early on, I think that's quite unusual for a media. I think normally the kind of like traditional media sits in the AV team and then digital sits outside the others. But we chose not to do that. And like I say, that did create some challenges early on because to begin with, you have people speaking different languages, and you're asking a team of people who are very well versed in traditional media to take on this whole new skill set and understanding. But I truly believe it was the right thing to do because they had a way of looking at things that people from a digital background didn't necessarily have. And in doing that and in persevering over time, and now we're in a place where we've got, you know, highly skilled AV landscape planners and buyers who have a really good view of a holistic view of the right thing to do with an asset. And I think that's really important. With YouTube specifically, it is obviously we've seen the numbers and particularly, and we've seen with the delivery of post-campaign, it does deliver like cost-effective reach, but it's been really interesting to look into those numbers. You've got to be able to look at it from the point of view of what's effective reach for you, and there's lots of layers and quality variables that you apply to that. The content on YouTube is vast, obviously. We're talking about broadcaster content through to, you know,
Putting up your curtains.
Putting up your curtains, which is actually but then useful. Some other things that, you know, user-generated that you definitely wouldn't want to be around, and we've you know, created safeguards and, guardrails, and we've got really sophisticated tech and tools to make sure that we're very safe when we go into a YouTube environment. We're very particular, and we interrogate the content to the best of our ability. Ideal world would be that, you know, we like granular interrogation. That's what we've always done with our TV schedules historically, and that's what we want to understand. And that's not been so easy. We've had to really push for that over time. But the fact of the matter is, you know, there is a lot of content creators that is out there that people immerse themselves in and they do watch on YouTube, and the view of whether or not that is fit for TV is such a subjective question, and so down to the individual and the individual advertiser and the individuals within that advertiser. I personally, this is my point of view, is that content is absolutely king and environment and context should be a huge part of a campaign. So I think we've made great leaps forward, but that's definitely an area that we've got some significant leaps to take. Yeah. And I look forward to whatever we can do to understand more about it.
The context on those numbers is interesting, isn't it? Because there was great big lumpy numbers for YouTube, and there is on younger audiences. But if you take the small devices out, non-TV devices out, and look at the television set and programming from broadcasters and AVOD and SVOD on the television set, which is a different context and produces a different environment, which delivers a different type of effectiveness. you know, on the TV set, 95% of all that viewing is through a TV set. Even the YouTube, 5% through a TV set, which is growing. It's the, you know, and that's important. I think it's their fastest growing fastest growing screen. But even with the 1634s, YouTube had about, I think, 12% on the TV set. So I think the context for us is quite a lot of the time what screen you're watching on, because that's the environment that makes a big difference in effectiveness.
Absolutely, and the same for us. And I would say we're, you know, and also thinking about the advertising formats within those environments. So some of those will be non-skip, and some of those will be bumpers compared to a 20, 30-second ad, and understanding the advertising takeout and the effect, long-term and short-term, of that is definitely something we're keen to.
Okay, so Lucy, let's focus on how we measure effectiveness and context then, because you know there's value in context. When you put Dope Sick out, you know, that's worth advertising against. But how can you show that as a measurement? Because, you know, we've covered reach and frequency measurement. That's a very technical thing, but this is a little bit more tricky and the lines start to blur. But how do you go about sort of showing this context is worth paying more for, it's more effective, therefore, you know, it's more valuable? I mean, just talk us through the sort of how you can actually measure it, and do we have to wait 2 years for a massive study, or can we do something in the shorter term?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a few reasons. I think, you know, very early on in our launch, when we were merely months old, we joined Thinkbox, and I think, you know, they have got an amazing depth of great studies to help understand that difference across the different media, and we certainly align, you know, from a Digi Plus ad tier with that. So I think, you know, there's a lot of information out there. In terms of specific campaigns, you know, we now do a lot of work with first-party data, so those exposed to campaigns, looking at brand lift studies, you know, in real time getting data back on those. That's really been a huge shift forward, so we can actually really, you know, very, very quickly turn around insights on the effectiveness of the campaigns. And I think, you know, we're going to be rolling out more solutions. I think, you know, outcomes is clearly a buzzword in the industry right now, but certainly looking at being able to track first-party data through to actual activation is going to be key.
Yeah, we've put a huge investment into outcomes in ITV. So there is a myriad of different proofs of concept, of different things that I've already launched that we've, you know, that PhD and others are using to understand all sorts of different ways that TV can drive different metrics for you, and really important metrics for advertisers. The thing I always come back to thinking, and you're right, the Thinkbox work is fantastic, but it is tricky because you sort of know, if you can see from the outcomes work that it works, and you can see from the econometrics that it works. It's then going backwards and trying to realise how that works. And then, you know, there's been fantastic studies over the years about how we process advertising and how auditory processing in the lounge is so important, and we're social animals and it's the hearth in the room, and you know, those sort of things are really, really important when it comes to advertising effectiveness. Those things are the trickier ones to measure, I think. You know, really tricky to pin down, although there is a lot of great stuff out there if you can look hard enough.
Okay, now we've got time for audience questions. We've got 10 minutes at least, so we've got plenty more we can talk about, so if we run out, we will, but let's have this gentleman down here.
So I'm just curious to know about the impact of catch-up and stuff like that. Obviously, because obviously, you know, you get a specific demographic, and I'm also curious to know about, in terms of the impact of, with YouTube, for example, in terms of, you talked about 140 channels or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just curious to know, how do you, in terms of, you know, do you sort of delay sometimes the data when you're over a course of maybe 3 months? Because obviously, when I see statistics, say somebody watches, I don't know, the England quarter-final, well, this demographic story is on live, and then this sort of catch-up. How do you curate the figures for that, just out of interest?
It varies by genre, and very broadly, as obviously habits have shifted and people are more used to on-demand TV and streaming TV, you know, you see more catch-up available, and that's why we've launched streamers as well, because, you know, that is the growth area for TV. It is moving into that online TV world. So catch-up is really important, and on-demand is really important. It's absolutely vital to give the content to everybody anytime they want. So we have huge, we at ITV, we affectionately call them fireworks and bonfires. We have large-scale, big event television that brings in massive, great big audiences, and it's usually a live audience, you know, football matches, I'm a Celebrity, those sort of things. And they provide these great big fireworks where you get a massive audience, but there isn't a tremendous amount, for a football game, there's not a tremendous amount of catch-up TV. But what that allows us to do, particularly inside a streamer, is look at that data and then start to target those people and understand what they might want to watch next. And what we try and do then is push them towards shows which we call bonfires, which are equally as important. The bonfires are more on demand, often shows that are made in industrial quantities, but people hang around and watch them like you'd be in a bonfire. And the two things complement each other. So we have those two things working, and I think all streamers have exactly the same thing. That's why probably when you looked at the data in the first place, Friends was always the #1 show on Netflix, because everyone...
Grey's Anatomy
and still,
does a great
Grey's
job
Anatomy.
for us.
Yeah, so we all have, that's the kind of how it works, I think. We call it fireworks and bonfires.
There was talk about quality, context and effectiveness. What's the panel's view about measurement of audience attention and emotional engagement? And I'm thinking of, you know, vendors like MediaProbe, T-Vision, who give people devices, run panels to measure those things against targeted streams of content.
Attention is an interesting one. Lots of people have different definitions of what that means. It's certainly for us a proxy to effectiveness. It's, you know, understanding if people have paid attention helps you. You don't know if they're going to do anything off the back of that, but it certainly is an interesting thing to look at. And we've actually just invested in a 1,200 household panel with a company called Amplified Intelligence. I'm sure you've probably heard of them. And it's the first of its kind in the UK, because a lot of the time when you see the data from a TV set viewing, it's from another market. Yeah. So this is UK households, and we've got about 3 months worth of data so far. It's been really fascinating to start to delve into it. We're just on the Euros, actually, lots of... so what we're looking at is there's this eye tracking, really great tech in people's homes to understand whether they're active, passively, or non-active viewing. And then we can cut that in lots of different ways: programs, channels, genres, day parts, position in break, loads of different things. But one of the interesting things that we saw was an advertiser, the ad, the length of the ad, so 10, 20 second, 30 second, 40 second, 50 second, the percentage of active attention decreases the longer the ad is, apart from in the Euros, when actually in the Euros games, if the ad was a longer time length, the active attention went up quite a lot. So that was just, you know, that's a really great insight for us to, because clients often come to us and they're unsure whether what time length to make, whether to invest in it costs them a lot to produce these things. Yeah. So for us to be able to say, we can say more confidently, yes, and we know where to put it, and we know where it's going to get really good attention.
I think these attention measures are great, and it adds a fantastic...
It's another layer.
Yeah, fantastic layer. I think the thing I would say in a but is that, again, if you're inside a lounge with lots of people, you're doing some media a disservice by just looking at attention on screen, because that's not the whole picture for how advertising works. So non-visual attention, auditory signals that come in, low attention processing is incredibly important, chatting to other people. So I guess we used to have a phrase, didn't we? Oh, I'm glued to the telly. But if you actually think about it, when are you ever actually glued to the TV? But you still take loads of stuff in. And so I think that's if we can somehow join the kind of eyes on screen, real kind of, that sort of finite measurement with this eye tracking with some more auditory stuff, because that's where the magic happens, and that's why it becomes so effective.
And I think that's the key point, isn't it? These are all, we're just gathering layers of understanding, and there isn't one answer. It's having, as you know, we want as many views as possible on the right way forward for an advertiser, for a bespoke response to a campaign.
I mean, Sky claim to be going a step further than that now, and actually deciding what the emotion is that came out of that attention with absorption. So are you engrossed? Are you really focused? So we just sort of take the proxy one more step towards effectiveness?
Yeah, and we all are using AI and lots of experiments to go down that route with contextual ideas, whether it's recommending marketing, recommending content, understanding what's in the content and how an advertiser can get closer to that. Yeah, there's a ton of work bubbling under the surface on that too.
I notice when I'm watching a YouTube, I seem to get the same advert time and time again. It's actually not as bad. I think Daily Motion, they play the same advert twice in one break, which I think must be some kind of a record or whatever. I just wonder if there are decreasing returns. I think, if you actually played me more adverts, and I appreciate I'm a 64-year-old male, I don't watch influencers, I'm probably not your advertiser's key market, that's true. But I still wonder, there seems to be this excessive wisdom. We are targeting people effectively. I wonder, is that the case? If I'm getting the same advert all the time, and frankly, I'm muting it because I've seen it about 500 times. Are you actually doing things right?
Okay, so Amy, I suppose you should take that because you're the person who puts adverts out into the world. And I mean, obviously, if we're talking about the sort of the streamers, YouTube. We're not clearly it doesn't happen in the broadcast world yet. Okay, so what's the problem? Can we fix it as well?
Well, first of all, it must have been an advertiser from a different agency.
Definitely wasn't Omnicom.
I think that's the other thing, like our ability to understand not just the reach, but the frequency to which a person, a unique viewer is receiving that ad, it does still remain a challenge. We take lots of steps and we put lots of things in place in these systems that we buy the advertising through. So we'll set them up to, I only want the user to see it once in this week, and we do lots of things to ensure that doesn't happen. But clearly it still does because you've...
TUI's not got time to be audited, isn't it?
What, sorry?
I said TUI.
Oh, TUI, no, that's not us. That'll be another holding group.
Hey, I know ITV are investing a lot in fast channels and partnerships with people like Samsung, Disney with LG. Where do they fit into the measurement here? I know you guys don't speak for Barb, but isn't that a big missing part of the sort of 360 view if CTV and fast isn't included in the measurement that we see?
Well, we pick up our fast channel measurement via Barb when we measure our total ITV hours. So we know it is inside that Barb system, but we obviously have our own measurement inside ITV to understand how those fast channels work. And those fast channels are, they are actually getting more and more powered by data. We are trying to make them more flexible, and they're obviously, I mean, it's very simple, isn't it? I might say they're powered by data, but you could probably do it yourself. The ones that, football games are getting really popular around the World Cup, so we put a football fast channel on. Christmas movies get really popular at Christmas, so we put the Christmas fast channel on. Midsummer Murders is always popular, again, because it's just, it is lean back. Those are great channels for just leaning back and letting it wash over you. So we have a really great finite measurement of those fast channels, and they're an increasingly important part for us and our studios business too, because, they license their shows to be fast channels in different territories.
So audience measurement serves the advertisers and media agencies really well, and the business in terms of commissioning successful programs, in terms of reach and growth, and ultimately profit and longevity for some of the media companies. Ultimately, we're all here to support content, and I wonder your opinions about how do we use measurement to serve the creative process. So how do we balance using all this data and then something like taking a risk on a program or idea that might not be a success on paper?
We have a a whole suite of ways that we support the content development, which isn't just data-led, you'll be pleased to know. So, anything from understanding the awareness or if it's a known IP like Rivals, who does it resonate? What does it mean for younger people who weren't around in the 80s doing what people in Rivals did? Right through to understanding the proposition, understanding how to communicate that proposition, doing pilot testing, focus groups. So there's a whole range of different tools that we use across that creative process. At the end of the day, the success is measured on data, but certainly the input in terms of getting the best creative and the best storytelling, is definitely people-backed, if that answers.
Yeah. We're lucky enough to be able to, if you can't measure it, you can't change it. I think that's probably it. So we're lucky enough to be able to measure and then understand which audiences are watching it. And then we're really lucky because we can just go and ask them.
And also, the great thing about a lot of the data is, from our marketing teams, we have 1,000 Blows coming out, which is Stephen Knight, Peaky Blinders production, and is it ITV Studios? I don't know. And so we can use proxies, and I think that helps us. Anything that can help champion those titles when we go out to marketing them has got to be good for everybody. So.
Okay, there's another question there, the lady in the blue dress.
Oh, thank you. Hi, it's Lindsay from ThinkBox. I also just wanted to answer the CTV question because the fast channels outside of the main broadcasters and YouTube, I think the total viewing to other CTV is like a fraction of a percent. It's absolutely minuscule. So I think we're so dominated by what's happening in the US and everybody assumes the same here, and it's not at all. Anyway, little aside. I'm really interested to hear from the panel, how much do you agree with Evan's proposition that all those young people will take their behaviour with them? So, we used to talk about the cohort and the life stage effect. Okay. What do you think is going to...
Well, let's finish then by each of you answering that in turn. So, Lucy, you start first.
It's a good question. I wish I had that crystal ball. When I look around my team, most of them were born, within the last 25 years, a lot of our interns, and none of them own a TV set at the moment. They're watching through their laptops, but they have an aspiration to. And when they've got their own flat, that's one of the things, we talk about it quite a lot. So, I do think there's going to be a life stage piece for sure. But the extent to which they're shifting their choices, I think, interestingly, Disney Plus 16 to 34 profile is actually bigger than YouTube's. So, we know they love content too. So.
Well, he was very definite, wasn't he? And I think that's, I don't think you can be definite at all about that. I keep on going back to thinking about us being social animals, and we can't predict. I think, you look at, he said about muscle memory, and I do believe that it's, we've got a big job to do as TV companies, as broadcasters, as producers, to make sure that we are part of that muscle memory for younger audiences, for audiences now as they get older. And again, we're trying to do that through the strategies that we've got. So they might very well have a different set of choices that, ranked in a different order. When they're a bit older, we might be third or fourth, or YouTube might be the way in to their TV set. But I would be really disappointed and freaked out if my teenager, when they're 40 years old, are all sitting with their family on a mobile each in the lounge. So I don't think it's going to be that exaggerated. I think it'll be. But I don't think you can be definite.
Okay, Amy, wrap us up with your answer.
I think that the ecosystem, what we want to watch, where we want to watch it, and the choice that we've got is making it evolve in a way that it's not going to be like we've seen before. So it is going to change. It's going to continue to change. But I think, and also we don't know what tech is around the corner that's going to completely change how we view it. But I think the fact will always remain that people will watch good content. So I hope that there's still really good quality content that pulls people together, I think, as humans. And I think we've said this already, we want to have that shared
social
experience.
Animals,
We're
yeah.
social animals. And I think that will prevail. It's going to be interesting. I think it will change, and it's going to, you know, it's not going to be as it is even today. But I think I'm hopeful that we'll still be watching great programs together and still talking about them, still having the water cooler moments. And when we're at work, we're still, does anyone see? Ugh, and then loving it.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to hand back to Teresa Wise in just one moment, CEO at the Royal Television Society. But before that, I'd just like to thank our brilliant panellists.